Hey, Source Gaming fans, article lead Spazzy here with you, with my once again not so special guest, as always, Wolfman.
Hey, everyone.
And we wanted to talk a little bit about the Castlevania content that's in Smash and what we think of it. We're not gonna go all game explain, deep dive analysis machine on you guys or anything. Part of the reason we wanted to do this is because I haven't been able to record anything since the reveal, and I'm by far the biggest Castlevania fan on the site.
I think I'm the second biggest Castlevania fan on the site, although not nearly as much as you.
Yeah, and I feel like you lean a little bit more towards the newer games, so I feel like between I've obviously played actually all of the Metroidvania and handheld games as well, but I feel like you're a little bit more passionate about those than I am, because I feel like I'm more of a holistic...
You like the classic Vanias instead of the Igavanias as much, or more.
I mean, I like them both quite a bit, but yeah, I have a soft spot for that. So yeah, I mean, we wanted to talk about this. I know that a lot of the people that we've had on the site talking about the Castlevania content really were all like, I don't know what this is, and it kills me. It kills me so much, man, that I wasn't on that reveal.
Yeah.
Number one, because I was super excited. You're not going to see me more excited on any character reveal for anything ever again.
Yeah.
I might get close if they ever do Bomberman, but that train sadly is passed for Ultimate at least.
I'm not sure if there's any character I wanted as much as you wanted Simon Belmont.
Yeah, it was... Since Melee, I dug up a tweet about that, about talking to friends in Melee. I'm like, man, you know who should be in this game? Simon Belmont. So I was super jazzed. I love the design. I love everything about it. And when I watched the reveal, too, I was talking to... Because I was working, which is why I couldn't do it, but I was working from a remote location. So my girlfriend was there, and she didn't care at all. And I'm all like, oh, why did they... I'm like, oh, they're giving him Richter's moves. That's a smart idea. Like, before Richter was revealed. Because you see Simon do the slide kick, but Richter does... I know you don't see the shoulder charge. I think you don't see the uppercut even. Tackle is what that move's called in the Castlevania games, right?
I think so.
But you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the one that I'm pretty sure debuted in Symphony. You couldn't do it obviously in Rondo, where you kind of slide forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know that in Harmony of Despair, the Xbox game, the big old multiplayer weird grindfest game. It's actually a fun game, which I would love if they actually released that on the Switch, or at least made it backwards compatible so I could still play it on my Xbox. I know there, I'm pretty sure it was referred to as Tackle. I remember when I was actually working on a Dream Smasher for Simon Belmont for like 2 years, but it was always just kind of in the background, so I never got around to finishing it. I know I remember actually speaking to Nintendex about this. I'm like, man, do you give Simon that and his forward tilt, because he can do the stupid crawl that Simon can do in Super Castlevania, and then your forward tilt would just be that? I'm like, or do you just go ahead and give him the Belmont slide, which Belmonts have had, basically since Richter? Actually, Maria could do that in Rondo of Blood, now that I'm thinking about it, but Richter couldn't do it till Symphony of the Night, if I remember correctly, and he was the first Belmont to do it.
I actually have never played Rondo of Blood, so...
why are you even here?
Yeah. Wolfman.
That's one of those things, like, it's even like if you could be an Earthbound fan but not play Mother 3, it's not readily available.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like to emulate, so I understand that. I actually didn't play that game until it came out on WiiWare, for a similar reason, because I never wanted to import or emulate it. So it really is obviously a great title. So what did you think about the reveal trailer?
I thought it looked great. Sakurai has this, performative element to him. The trailers are these kind of, fun little stories and vignettes instead of just, a move showcase. I think having Luigi kind of as your veteran character, because you kind of always have to have a veteran in these trailers. And, I think that was really brilliant. I don't know if anyone had ever really considered, Luigi using, going off to do a Luigi's Mansion thing in Dracula's Castle.
I remember, there was some stupid, fake leak with, Ganondorf fighting Link and then Simon comes or whatever.
Yeah,
but none of those make sense the way Luigi does. That was brilliant.
That's the thing with Sakurai is, there is this ability to make things just kind of make sense. Pit and Palutena should be there for the Bayonetta trailer.
Yeah, I agree. And those have been the best trailers. Another one is the Robin trailer. Arena Ferox, you have all those mercenaries in there. I'm sure you get a couple bounty hunters. I'm like, yeah, of course you could put Captain Falcon in there and reveal him there. That was also great.
Yeah.
Because the crossover moments are what makes Smash great. And, I mean, of course Luigi would be in there, and of course he would be useless in Dracula's castle,
I guess we'll get to Richter a little later in the trailer, but should we go to Simon specifically? Because I think there's a lot about it.
Yeah, we should. The thing I've always said about Belmonts in general, but Simon in particular, is that they have a Smash moveset that kind of writes itself.
Yeah.
Whenever you would go to, any support threads on a forum or Reddit, if anyone ever talked about Simon, you'd have, 12 different people throwing setting up move lists because it just works.
Every single one would have axe as the neutral special, cross as side special, uppercut or griffin wing, depending on which Castlevania you're more familiar with, is the up special, holy water is the down, Alucard is the assist trophy, either Dracula's castle or the clock tower as a stage. It's just, it works. Like, it's not an innovative character at all, but he just kind of makes sense in a very, like, meat and potatoes kind of way.
Right. He's this heavy zoning character that you can tell all of his tools, including his whip, have, like, a synergy to them.
Yeah.
And that's what's good. Yeah, it works. When I was coming up with a move list, I didn't have the axe as a neutral special because I wanted to put the dagger in. So I had dagger as neutral, boomerang as a side special. I used a hook because there were times where I used uppercut too, because obviously you go through different iterations.
Yeah.
But if you want to make it more Castlevania 4, you just spawn one of those Castlevania 4 hooks and have him. Yeah, it's not any more nonsensical than Sonic having a spring pop up underneath. And then I reserved axe actually for the up smash.
Oh.
Because I'm like, you don't really need it.
But I think here, like...
Right, it makes sense, right?
Because more nicely where everything is focused on the whip. Like, the smashes
Exactly.
all kind of move
But,
up.
Obviously this moveset looks great. I like that he has a tether recovery from Castlevania 4. Yeah. It's crazy because his tether recovery isn't like Zero Suit Samus. Nobody really had that full range of whip motion since Simon.
Yeah, no.
Some of the later guys and Richter have a little bit of it, but not like that full,
John in Portrait of Ruin does, but he ain't a Belmont, so... Sorry, buddy.
He's Belmont adjacent. He's from the line, right? It's been a while since I played those games. Like I think that's what it is that you're from the Belmont line, but if you're not like descend straight from the male line, apparently the Belmont warrior chromosome's on the Y. Which is why he could still use the whip. He just couldn't unlock its full power without killing himself or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing. I just wanted to point out that the actual handle on the whip, that's the one from Lords of Shadow.
It's not exactly the Combat Cross from the Lords of Shadow games because it doesn't have the Morningstar mace head.
Yeah,
those have more of a triangular tip.
Yeah, it has more of a spike because that's more edgy.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I thought that was a very cool thing that they stole because I always thought that was a kind of a cool design, the Combat Cross, Gabriel's Belmont's Combat Cross. So I don't mind them stealing it for the classic Belmont's Vampire Killer. I was actually wondering if they would go with a leather whip or what, and I think it looks great. Yeah. I think that was a really cool design choice.
In retrospect, I think that the chain makes a little more sense because it doesn't seem quite as violent, which is two people who reviewed the Castlevania Season 1, and we saw exactly what a whip can do to a human body.
Yeah, dude, if you could actually control a Morningstar flail on the end of a very long chain, though, you'd crush somebody's skull. It would be just as violent, if not more.
It seems bigger,
but
though.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like a little bit more fantastical and a little bit stronger than just like a bullwhip does.
Exactly, and it makes the tip, I think, also kind of... You know how, like, when Diddy Kong hits someone, his hands grow really huge?
Yes.
They just do that for a second to kind of, like, make the impact a lot larger. I think having that, like, the Morningstar there helps sell that.
Just as an aside, I'm just thinking about Rondo right now. I love Simon's Quest. Like, I know it's not the greatest game, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And I love that when you go through these towns in Rondo, at the beginning, it's the towns from Simon's Quest. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. I'm done.
Oh, no, it's totally justifiable. But I do think that the way that the Vampire Killer has been redesigned is a really good example of this kind of like, we'll use what works best. Like, Lords of Shadow, not really a great game series. I think the first one has some interesting ideas and goes on for way too long. The second is incredibly confused about what it is or wants to be. But you know what? That Combat Cross design works really nicely.
Yeah, and I actually think that Trevor in the Netflix series, his insignia on the Belmont crest is actually from Lords of Shadow.
It's nice to have another heroic kind of heavyweight character along the lines of Samus or DK.
Yeah, I agree.
Does
Snake
Snake
a heavyweight, but I don't know if he's still a heavyweight or not.
Well, that's why, like, he's a heavyweight in the same way Samus is a heavyweight, where they're kind of deceptive about it. I do think, though,
Simon looks beefy.
Yeah. The downside, I think, is that we're getting a very heavyweight stacked cast, and while I think we kind of needed a bunch of heavyweights now, I do hope we get some more kind of lighter characters for the next one.
That's interesting, because, yeah, now that you're saying that, I guess 3/4 of the non-Echo newcomers, the actual unique newcomers, were heavyweights, I guess. I think Ridley might be on the lighter side of heavyweights.
No,
I'm not sure.
I think he is very heavy. It's just that... Well, it's that he's very fast, but that it's offset by his weight and his size being so huge that he can't really dodge anything.
He's a big target.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which means if you have a combo-heavy character like Bayonetta, he becomes combo fodder. Okay, but that is an interesting way to look at it. But yeah, but we don't have many heroic, like you said, heavyweights. And like Simon looks like he could do okay in a punching contest with Ganondorf. He's got that look to him.
Yeah. And plus, this time he finally has air control.
Hey man, it wasn't that bad in Super Castlevania. It wasn't like NES bad. Yeah, I guess you're right. Oh no, he's looking pretty good. I like that they went with Barbarian Simon. One of his looks is from the Japanese version of Super Castlevania. Is definitely one of his colors are based off of. And you know what's interesting? I feel like by introducing Richter, and I mean we'll get to Richter in a minute. Part of that was to satisfy kind of the fan base that wants like newer Belmont designs, but neither of them actually went with their Ayami Kojima design, with their symphony kind of post-symphony flowery gothic anime design, because Richter went with his original Rondo of Blood Dracula X design, so he could be one of the headband bros with Ryu, Snake, and Ike to see who wore it best. Who wore that headband best?
There better be, and if event matches are returning, and I assume they will be, I'm now kind of wanting a headband bros match.
Oh man, is there a fifth headband bro? Because that might be my Squad Strike team. For when I play Squad Strike mode.
I feel like when we get off this, I'm going to look at the character select screen and be like, oh, damn it. Oh, wait, Pikachu.
Pikachu does have a headband. Okay, we're set.
Yeah, boom.
I'm set with my headband bro team. Oh, man, I'm excited. I'm more excited for this game now than I was before we started talking.
Yeah, with Simon's design, like, there's really only the two you can do. Yeah, the Yamane redesign for, I want to say, Castlevania Chronicles.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it works better as very much as specifically for being kind of a representation of that older interpretation of Simon, because Simon, for the most part, is, like, a lot of their representation is coming specifically from Castlevanias 1 through 3.
Right, which we'll talk about in a minute. Because a lot of people say it's like his Super Castlevania design, but it's not.
Yeah, no, it is not.
It's very clearly NES box art design.
Exactly. This is his original box art design in the way that, like, Captain Falcon drew a lot from, like, that character's being in the manual, but not in the actual game for the first F-Zero.
I really like how they kept so true to the Belmont strut. Both him and Richter, they have that Belmont walk, which it's the best looking I've ever seen it in 3D, because I've tried it before and it didn't really work. Much like Mega Man, it's completely a Mega Man situation, where they took kind of the most iconic NES sprite version and kind of brought it to life. Like they basically painted the cover art over the NES sprite, and it's fantastic. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, no, it really is great. And like we said before, like making Simon work that well is not really that difficult compared to, say, like how everyone had that Mega Man had like all these ideas for a Mega Man design that were kind of like nothing like what Sakurai came up with. Like Simon was, like you said, a character in Castlevania series that's pretty easy to port to Smash, but that it's just done with that level of quality is really nice. Like it's still nice to see, even if it's not shocking.
Right, and it still could have been done wrong. And like I said, it looks like there's a lot of synergy with how everything works. I don't remember him ever, or any Belmont having a dive kick. I could be wrong.
They're in the Igavania games. I think Richter has one, and there's some dive kicks.
Does he have it in Symphony?
You can get it in, I think, Aria, and you can get it in Portrait of Ruin. It's like a whole technique. I mean, I don't really know if you could put it to any Belmont, but I think you can say that at least on a general level, it's now a fairly accepted Castlevania move.
I think Juiced has it.
Yeah, Juiced has it in Harmony of Dissonance, because I'm playing that, and it's not so good.
And Harmony of Dissonance, I think, is one of the only handheld games that doesn't have any songs in this.
It does not.
But it's hilarious because Circle of the Moon does, because Circle of the Moon is not an Igarashi game either. Circle of the Moon was made by the same team that made Castlevania 64.
Oh.
It was actually taken out of the canon when Igarashi redid the timeline, and I'm like, you're just taking the games you didn't make out of the canon. But I felt like Harmony of Dissonance was him being all like, oh, that card idea from Circle of the Moon and having a playable Belmont type of character was cool. I'm just going to remake that game, pretend that game didn't happen, and make the protagonist like basically Alucard Belmont. And that game always, it never sat well with me.
I should note I'm playing it without really knowing any of that history, and it basically feels like, what if you had Symphony of the Night but a less interesting main character?
Yeah, it felt very derivative.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I feel like that game was... Have you ever played Circle of the Moon?
I haven't. It's the only one of the GBA or DS games I haven't played in any capacity.
A lot of people kind of skip over it because it's not. I feel like it's not talked about as much, and I know a lot of hardcore Castlevania fans will disagree with me. It's one of my favorites of those because it's not an Igarashi game, so it has a different flavor.
Yeah.
I feel like where a lot of his games started getting a little samey to the point where he made 2 Sorrow games, which are in a lot of people's opinion are kind of the pinnacle of those, not including Symphony. And I think they're very good games, but I feel like those are like the most like trying to recapture Symphony that he got. And I thought that he started getting a little different with like Portrait of Ruin, the 2 characters. But yeah, no, Harmony of Dissonance was it was literally because Nathan Graves has that same gimmick where you collect cards for power-ups and he's basically a Belmont. He's not a Belmont, but he has a vampire killer whip. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a huge random ramble from David here. No one wants to hear Spazzy talk about well, maybe people do, but not now.
Okay,
this is not time to talk about Circle of the Moon.
Okay, how about this? Audience, if you have access to GPA games, play Circle of the Moon and Aria of Sorrow. Don't necessarily play Harmony of Dissonance so much. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would suggest that. And I would suggest all of the DS titles.
Yes. Yeah, the DS titles are very good. I mean, when I last played Aria of Sorrow earlier, which is to write something for the site that actually hasn't been published yet, I decided that to learn more about it, I would grind through every single enemy in the game, which is something I never do, to get every one of the souls. And there's some weird souls in there. I don't think anything quite as crazy as the Medusa Shield, but there's quite a few. But in the interest of being at least slightly on topic...
Yeah.
Let's go to the other character in that trailer, which is specifically Richter, which I don't think anyone really saw coming.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world. Which a lot of people are saying that's the line he said, but he doesn't. He actually goes, "Be gone! You don't belong in this world."
Yeah, a less iconic,
a more
but
PG version,
more acceptable. Like it's the same thing with the Ryu trailer. Like he says, you must defeat my Shoryuken to stand a chance, not you must defeat my Shenlong to stand a chance.
Well, for instance, I think a good comparison is Bayonetta. You don't mess with a witch.
Yeah.
No, we don't mess with you, Bayonetta. And Bayonetta does not mess with the ratings board, so...
So for Richter, he's not really necessarily the most popular of the Belmonts. I think Trevor might be that.
Right. I think he's part of the trifecta. I think the 3 most popular are probably... No, I'll say definitely are Richter, Simon, and Trevor. And I think Richter, don't quote me on this, but I think he might be the most popular one in Japan. I think Japan really likes Richter.
He also has the benefit of being from both sides of the Castlevania coin. He is one of the very few Belmonts in the series to have multiple playable appearances because of Rondo,
yes,
Symphony, and then, if you count it, the bonus mode in Portrait of Ruin. And that's kind of what I think is the big part of why he was chosen.
Simon has the most playable, although it's just remakes of the same adventure for the most part.
Yeah.
But he's in Castlevania and Castlevania 2, which are 2 completely different adventures. And then he's in the arcade game Haunted Castle, he's in Chronicles. Haunted Castle actually got music in this, which is amazing because... Yeah. We'll talk about that more in music, but who cares about Haunted Castle?
I think you'd agree with me that if Castlevania had a second newcomer who wasn't an Echo, it'd pretty much have to be Alucard, right?
Of course, yeah.
And so obviously we can't do that unless Alucard was an Echo of someone else, which would be pretty disappointing. So,
make him a Marth Echo. Make everyone a Marth Echo. We need more Marth Echoes.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Robin.
You know what? That would be really weird. I don't think that, but actually that would work better.
Yeah.
But now that.
But Richter was the guy from Rondo of Blood, which is kind of, I think you could argue, the last of the great, classic Vania games, depending on how you view Bloodlines. But he's also the character from Symphony of the Night, because, the whole point of the main part of that game is Alucard going to Dracula's castle and fighting not just his own father, but the Igarashi sort of ideological father by having him fight a Belmont.
Right.
He's important for reflecting
I'll
both
say
sides
this
of that.
About Richter and why he's important is that he is literally the first character you control when you play Symphony of the Night.
Ooh, you're right.
Which is why when some people are like, "Who's that?" and then pretend they've played Symphony of the Night later, in reactions and stuff you see, you're all like, you've literally never played Symphony of the Night. He's literally the first person. So even if you're only a fan of the Metroidvania, explorative platforming style of Castlevania games, you know who he is because chances are that you've played Symphony if you've played those style of Castlevania games because that's the most iconic one, and he's front and center. He's literally the first character that you play as in that game. So he's a great choice. Also, he has moves that function really well in a platform fighter.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that Simon couldn't do them, but if you're going to give Simon some of Richter's moves, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Final Smash, obviously, Grand Cross, Tackle, which we talked about.
He definitely has
and then,
much more of the
and the sliding kick.
Yeah. In general, though, he definitely feels like, as much as we talked about how he feels like Simon, he's not quite ripped straight from the NES, so he does feel like he's getting the modern amenities that Richter's games had.
Right. Those mobility options that you don't see in Simon, but that you do see in Richter and a lot of the later Belmonts, or later just Castlevania protagonists, not even Belmonts, right? And there's a lot of nice touches with them, including his music. I like that they started off with Vampire Killer and they went to Bloodlines, Richter's theme song, which was great. Both awesome versions. It was cute how they used the rain environment in the Pikmin stage to make it look like he was doing Hydro Storm.
Yeah.
Because that, you know what, that is also everybody's favorite move as far as item crashes go, because of Symphony, not because of Rondo. It's definitely because you get that move and you're like, time to decimate Dracula at the beginning of Symphony of the Night without even really trying.
I'm gonna be completely frank, I really wanted all the achievements in that game when I first played it on the 360, so after I realized I wanted to do that, that is the only one I used.
And if you guys play Symphony of the Night, there's an unlockable mode afterwards where you can play as Richter.
Yes.
And in Richter mode, you can see where all of Simon moves that he stole from Richter originated from. I kind of like Richter's Symphony design a little bit better, but it's cool to see his classic Rondo Dracula X design.
Yeah, I definitely prefer that kind of later Symphony design, but I also really like the fact that they went with like that kind of anime design that was in the intro cutscene and on the cover of the original version. It's kind of fits with Simon too. In fact, if you look at their amiibos and their official Smash renders, they're both based off of the covers to Castlevania 1 for the NES and for Dracula X. Did you notice that? I did notice because I saw it in your Twitter feed. Thank you.
That's true. That's a good reason to know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only thing is Simon has to be turned around and his whip should be behind him and not in front of him. But yeah, no, it's...
but then you'd have to have your
that is one of those
of someone from the back,
which would be great. I think that's one of the most iconic kind of old school sprite art intros is Simon entering Castlevania, both on the NES and on Super Castlevania 4. Speaking of Super Castlevania 4, we kind of skipped over this with Simon. He's got the whipping in every direction, which is cool. And like I was saying, his tether recovery is not a grab, so he can do a back air and grab the ledge from behind him, which is amazing. They showed that.
That's awesome.
That is really cool. And he has a stupid whip thing that I guess Richter actually has in Symphony too. The I can move my whip around like Sheik does. Although, to be fair, when Sheik did that in Melee, I'm like, oh, she does a whip thing like Simon did in Castlevania 4. He did it first. I'll say this about Richter too. I like that his taunts and his victory pose are once again based off of the FMV from Rondo. That's amazing.
Yeah, he does the V sign. It's great.
Yeah, and even him holding the whip as his taunt is also from there. It's also from the intro.
It's the little things.
Exactly. And Castlevania got a lot of love with the little things.
Yeah, every series gets a lot of love with the little things here, I think. But
especially in this game, yeah.
This is still a game where you can play as Pikachu Libre. Like, I'm still shocked about that, honestly. I know that has
I'm glad that this game is bringing alternate costumes. I was kind of thinking that Simon would have the Chronicles design, but, I mean, it's better to have Richter as a brand new character than to have Simon with the Chronicles design, so I'm fine with that. Like I said, I do wish Richter had, as an alternate palette, the Kojima design, because so many people know him more with that design.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that it would be good for those characters to have alternate designs. Richter especially.
And I mean, it's a very minor complaint with the immense amount of Castlevania content we got.
Yeah, like...
I'm going to make it anyways.
Yeah, we're going to say this is very much a best-case scenario. Actually, it's, like, very much beyond a best-case scenario.
Right, I wouldn't have imagined this much.
Yeah, and I mean, we can look at that in the stage.
Right, the stage is great, and I'm wondering if, when you turn the hazards off, I know not too many people are really going to care, if it's something that can be considered for legal, because if you look, it's not a walk-off. On the left side of the stage, in his trailer, when you see Simon use the axe, he hits Pac-Man on the left side of the stage, and you already see how the break in the stairs from the right side. So it actually looks like when you turn hazards off, it's going to be a pretty cool and simple stage, which is great, because a lot of people like to play like that, and it looks awesome and has a lot of great music. Personally, though, I love the fact that it has so many Castlevania enemies in it.
Yeah, so many. And this is another one of those things, like, every single one is the best one to go with. Carmilla is using her kind of like original Symphony of the Night design, which is probably better considering that some of the other versions were...
Or Simon's Quest design.
Yeah, instead of like some of the later designs that were a little more risque.
Risque?
Yeah. But yeah, Werewolf is also from later one.
Right.
Yeah,
It's every boss from Castlevania 1, using their Castlevania 1 design. Creature and Flea Man, basically Frankenstein's monster and Igor, are exactly like the version from Castlevania 1.
Yeah.
Like, exact.
Yeah, some of the later versions of Creature were a little greener, and they pretty much all got rid of Flea Man. Just as a fun little thing, in the very terrible Castlevania fighting game, Castlevania Judgment, all those bosses are in as characters, and all of the bosses from Castlevania 1 are represented except the giant bat.
In Symphony, when you get to the Upside Down Castle, don't you fight all of the Castlevania 1 bosses, starting with the giant bat?
Well, starting unless you want to go the... Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
No, most likely
Continue.
you will fight the giant bat first, because he's right next to the save room.
And he's also lame. He's always lame. The coolest the giant bat has ever been has been in Super Castlevania when he wasn't a giant bat, he was made of money. He was a money bat.
Ooh. I'm also a big fan of the Dawn of Sorrow one, which is just a bunch of little bats that fuse into like things like Moe statue heads.
Yeah, there are some cool bat bosses. Okay, I'll give him that. I'm just saying the very first bat boss in Castlevania is lame.
Yeah, no,
he's a lame
The
boss.
vampire bat is lame and has always been lame, and its lameness has been a recurring and arguably important part of the Castlevania series.
Actually, all of the
Yeah.
bosses that appear on that stage are from Castlevania 1 or 2. The werewolf is not a boss in Castlevania 2, but he is a regular enemy on the countryside.
Yeah.
I believe the version of him that they used was the boss from Rondo of Blood, which makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that looked like the Rondo of Blood version that has been reused like since.
Yeah, they pair him up with the Minotaur a lot for some reason.
I don't know, it seems like a good comedy double act.
Right? Yeah.
Spazzy.
You got the strong man and the quick dude.
You know, Spazzy, just saying, if you change your name to Spazzy Minotaur Man, just saying, I think we could work as
we can make this. Okay, we can make it work.
with Death. It kind of reminds me a bit of the Symphony of the Night design, mixed with like a bit of the Aria of Sorrow design, and mixed with kind of a bit of like Castlevania 1 design. I don't really think it has like a specific, obvious point of origin.
I honestly haven't looked enough to really tell you that. I don't know. That's interesting. I'd like to look. I mean, Death is kind of death.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, hey, it's a Grim Reaper. It's a skeleton with a scythe.
And you know, it's not without value that the Smash version draws from multiple kind of Castlevania sources in the same way that Death in Castlevania draws from multiple artistic sources.
His attack, though, I think is very Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 2. Well, actually, no, we don't see it. We just see him break the window. We're not sure if any of these, or how many of these enemies on the stage are just background dressing.
Yeah.
And how many actually do something.
I feel like we'd see them do something if they did something in the trailer, because they kind of refer to them as
I think some of them probably do something.
Yeah. Dracula, assuming he is an actual interactable boss on the stage, and I think we'll get to that later, looks great. He's basically everything you'd want, which is to say, they grab a lot of something from Castlevania 1, they grab a little something from Castlevania Rondo of Blood, they grab a little something from Symphony of the Night.
They grabbed something from Castlevania 3. I think that's where he started using that pillar attack.
Yeah.
The balls are from Rondo, the fire,
Yeah.
not the fireballs, but the spheres.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
As did that version of his transformation. Because every
Yeah,
time...
and that version of the transformation is definitely from Rondo.
Yeah.
I mean, he always turns into that monster, but that design is the one that people know from Rondo, and more importantly, from Symphony.
Yeah.
And Kid Dracula. Have you ever played Kid Dracula?
I have not, no.
I have also not played Kid Dracula. That's one of my few blind spots with Castlevania, and I should change that.
Yeah.
It always looked like a charming, fun game. I've heard that he's actually Alucard, like, technically, because he's not actually like Dracula as a kid.
It's been so long. I remember
He's supposed to be
reading
like
about the game
Dracula's
years
son?
ago, back when I had been kind of like, it must have been when I was playing one of the games. I was like, man, I really gotta read more Castlevania stuff. And I think he is sort of Alucard, except that it's not really considered canon.
Of course. Although I do know that Galamoth is his main villain in those games.
Yep.
And he appears as a boss in Symphony.
He
and in, I
appears
think,
as the most
one of the
frustrating-
Sorrow games as well?
Yes, actually, no, sort of. Basically, Aria and Dawn of Sorrow, you play as a character who absorbs the souls of enemies and bosses and can use those to do all kinds of attacks or moves, and they kind of replace the upgrades, the kind of like upgrades and relics you'd get from other Metroidvania games. Galamoth does not appear in Aria of Sorrow, but you can actually get one of the main, like one of the permanent souls you get is Galamoth's soul. And a weird feature in them is that most of the time these, like, actually plot-relevant ones are, like, intended path ones, aren't actually from any kind of boss or enemy. They're just from, like, they're just, like, sealed in the lantern, and you hit the lantern and you get it. There, you did your digression, and now I've done mine.
Okay, well, let's move on. I think that Dracula is almost definitely not a stage boss because the layout of the stage is different. I believe the throne is only on the flat stage, and otherwise it might be a coffin. I don't recall, but no, the layout is different. It definitely harkens in design to Rondo, but I mean, it's even the position of the moon and things. It's repeated a lot in Castlevania.
Yeah,
but it comes straight from the NES title. It's beautiful.
You always get into Dracula's main area from the right side. You always go left.
I think it's kind of reminds me of Rondo. It's been a while.
It reminds me a lot of Symphony, which would make it a lot like Rondo. Because, to explain, in Castlevania Rondo of Blood, the reason why you start playing as Richter is that you essentially start in a can't-lose battle against version of the final boss battle, and then you flash back to a few years later, where you're playing as Alucard instead, and that part of the castle remains, but every other part of the castle does not.
Right, and the thing is, like, ever since literally the boss battle in the NES game, that's how his throne room works.
Yes.
You always go through the staircase, and you always get there. It's just classic Castlevania Dracula's Tower. But I'm pretty sure that that's a completely different stage, and he's just a boss on whatever Spirits mode or boss rush thing that they have.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if he makes any real appearances on the stage.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's also worth pointing out, like, that they do differentiate him from everyone else. Anyway,
oh, here's something. So I need to, like, watch the trailer frame by frame. Simon and Richter, their uppercut in Symphony and other, like, they definitely just use the whip to do the uppercut.
Yes.
But it looks like to me, and I could be wrong, are they actually taking their sidearm and using that for the uppercut?
It kind of looked a bit like they were just using the whip, but you couldn't see it.
Maybe. All the Belmonts always wear those stupid short swords and never use them.
Yes!
So it would actually make me happy to see them use it. In Castlevania 64, actually, I think was the only game where I've ever seen a Belmont type of character use it, because Reinhard Schneider, like, one of the buttons is to use a sword, because the whip is so long and unwieldy, it makes sense to have a short sword for when somebody gets up close to you. And of course, we've seen Trevor Soccer kick it into Cyclops' head on the TV show. But no, you never see it in the games.
Before we go to Alucard, I just want to make a quick note. Death Scythe is pretty rad as an item.
I agree.
It's the home run bat.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
It's the home run bat, but from Castlevania. And you get to use it.
Well, it works different. It's kind of the opposite of the fairy bottle.
Oh, you're right, yeah. Most likely kills you instantly at over 100%.
But yeah, no, it's a brilliant item. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And you're right about the baseball bat analogy in a way. That's probably why they have nets running around with it in the reveal.
Oh, yeah.
So let's move on to Alucard. I like how they gave Alucard the most busted sword from Symphony of the Night.
They did.
Because the obvious thing to do would be to give him the Alucard sword and shield. Yeah, because this is like the weapons he uses in art, and it's named after him. It's like his family heirlooms or whatever, I'm assuming, from his mom's side.
Yeah. No, it's so good. The Chrysogrim is such a fun weapon, and if any of you decide to play Symphony of the Night later, and I think both of us highly, highly recommend it if you can get it or find it. It's basically a late-game weapon, which is essentially
broken.
Yeah, you strike about... It's not that it does much more damage than other enemies, but it hits at such an incredible rate, and you don't actually have to stop while you move it. That all you basically have to do is just keep pressing it again and again, and you just slice through enemies. It's really fun in the late game, which is where you get it. Incredibly broken, and I'm so happy that was what he's using here.
I think the only thing that he doesn't do, and I guess it might be because they didn't want to make him that complicated, and this is something I think he would do if he was playable, and also because Dracula is in the game. He doesn't have his teleport and fireballs, but, you know, Dracula's in the game, so why he doesn't really need it.
Yeah.
The mist is perfect. The stupid, you hit triangle and you slide back, he does that.
Oh, that's not stupid. That's really cool, seeing the weird, like, cell-shaded, like, neon blue light of him sliding backward. Okay,
yeah,
fine,
like, what do you call that, like a shadow trail?
Yeah, I think so. And
no, I love it.
The only thing that could be better is if he could have randomized colors of his cape to represent how the cape could change color.
And the bat, I want to point out also, is very important because that was one of his primary abilities in Castlevania 3. And also, I see people over and over again saying, oh, you know, it's weird that they have a character from Symphony of the Night. Which, no, because A, that doesn't matter. But B, Alucard originated on the Nintendo Entertainment System in Castlevania 3. His first appearance was on a Nintendo system. I know the design they're using is from Symphony, obviously, but, you know, he's a Nintendo character.
It's also just worth saying that regardless of anything else, like, Symphony of the Night Night is one of the most influential games in the entire series. So, like, as much as anything, like, it's the same with Metal Gear Solid being, like, Snake's representation isn't going to come from the NES version of Metal Gear.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, Cloud's... Okay, actually, some of Cloud's stuff is taken from this area.
But no, it's arguably the most important game in the series.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the most important and a super influential game and one of the most popular, so of course you're going to take Alucard's stuff from there.
Yeah, he's actually, like, not the first fighter who's done this, but, like, he's given Alucard all these attacks, he talks about how he's a tough fighter, and it's sort of like this, I can't make this character playable, but I'd kind of like to.
Yeah, I feel like Zero's like
Exactly.
that too. He's all like, I can't justify putting another non-Nintendo character in here, but I'm going to give this guy a lot of very iconic moves. And Bomberman was a special guest too. I think he's just really trying to include lots of characters.
Oh, yeah. And that's...
He called them special guests. He gave Rathalos an entire reveal for Monster Hunter.
Yes.
And I feel like Alucard in particular, like, you can kind of see how he would envision him as a fighter based off of what we saw.
Yeah, and it's not like he's the first person to do that, too, because, like, that was very much the case with Saki. I think to a certain extent that was a case with Dark Samus, where she'd have all these really cool moves, and there's a sense of, like, well, I want to make this character, well, I really like this character, can't really make them a fighter, but, you know, I'll try to give them these interesting abilities. So, the music.
Oh, yeah.
34
music.
pieces of music. And it turns out Street Fighter has 36, though I do actually kind of suspect that all of that will be 3 versions of the 12 themes from Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is a little disappointing, but, you know, what are you going to do?
No matter what, it's better than what Final Fantasy got, so we're still doing good.
Yeah, that is true. Before Castlevania was obviously confirmed, like, there was a few things that I think we could agree should be in the game. Like, obviously, you need to have Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, The Beginning, Theme of Simon, Bloodlines, and Dance of Illusions, and maybe Dracula's Castle.
You know what I thought was a little bit odd is that there's only one song from Castlevania 4.
Yeah, me too.
And the only version of Bloody Tears is that remix, right?
Yeah, it's only a medley with Monster Dance, which, admittedly, those two work really well together.
Yeah, thematically and not thematically.
Yeah.
Bloody Tears is literally the flip side of Monster Dance in Simon's Quest. One's a nighttime theme, one's a daytime theme in Castlevania Simon's Quest, where they both first appeared.
Yeah.
And I really like seeing actually a remix of Monster Dance because that's also a really good one, and you almost never see it remixed. You see Bloody Tears
all the time.
One of the great ones, obviously, all the time,
Bloody
but you
Tears.
very seldom see Monster Dance.
Yeah, Bloody Tears is almost certainly the most popular Castlevania piece of music, right?
I'd say that and Vampire Killer. They're probably neck and neck. Although Simon's theme isn't really Vampire Killer. They use it as his theme quite a bit, but it's really Dance of the Holy Man, which is Simon Belmont's theme from Castlevania 4, which is in here twice. Once from that motion-controlled arcade game, which actually I played at a Dave & Buster's once and was fun. No pachinko involved at all, which is obviously a plus. I'm glad the library made it from Symphony of the Night, by the way.
Yes,
That's
it's
such a good one.
I think with Castlevania, a lot of people think of, like, the rock themes or kind of the cool gothic themes.
Of course, but there's so much, like, atmospheric cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Lost Painting, I'm especially in love with. It's this kind of dark, like, intimidating theme. But then, like, for a few places, you have this really nice, like, kind of sweet, calming track. It's really just nice, and I'm really happy that they made time for that. Just as I'm so happy they made time for Aquarius.
I mean, those are good songs, but this is a fighting game, which is why I'm glad we have, like, Tragic Prince going back to Symphony of the Night, which starts off as kind of this, like, the very beginning of it seems like something's about to start, and then the guitars kick in, and that's a great one. That's one of my favorite tracks.
It's kind of like the Castlevania version of the Porky fight music from the end of Earthbound, where it starts out as kind of...
That is a weird way to put it, but that's actually very apt as well.
In terms of that, they also have Crash in the Dark Knight, which is probably the most popular of the Dawn of Sorrow boss fight themes, which admittedly there aren't a ton of. It's very cool, and it's just... Also Jet the Black Wings from Portrait of Ruin, too. And Go Getsu Fuma.
Yeah, that's actually from a completely different series. It's not even a Castlevania track, which makes me wonder if maybe we can get something else like that. And my personal want is to get like 1 or 2 Contra tracks on the Metal Gear stage.
Oh,
because it would fit thematically. And it's... Like, I love Metal Gear music, but most of it's much more, because it comes from later games, kind of orchestral and symphonic and atmospheric, but Contra songs are, old 8-bit, headbanging, like, blood-pumping tunes that are catchy and great for a fighting game. So I hope so.
It'd also be great because
yeah, going back to Castlevania, I'm glad we have almost every song from Castlevania.
Not everyone, because we don't have Heart of Fire.
I think we got Wicked Child also in a remix, but
we did,
which is a great one. We got Out of Time, Nothing to Lose, and of course Vampire Killer. You're hitting all the bases, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the things is that like if you see the games that have 3 or more, every single one of them makes sense because like, and I'm counting specifically songs with medleys, both versions. So I'm counting Simon's Quest as having 3 songs because it's representing Bloody Tears, Monster Dance, and Dwelling of Doom, even though it only has 2 of them. Because like all the NES games are on there, Symphony of the Night's on there, Rondo of Blood's on there. The only kind of outlier is Portrait of Ruin, which at least has a really good score. Like,
well, and Castlevania Bloodlines for the Genesis, which is one of my least played Castlevanias, even has a
Bloodlines
song on there. Let me tell you right now, though, Lords of Shadow is Castlevania of War.
Yeah.
Lamont of Innocence is Castlevania May Cry. It's it's totally a Devil May Cry ripoff, but with some of the exploration from the 2D Castlevanias mixed in. It is like most Castlevania 3D titles, okay at best. But if you like Castlevania and you like those sort of games, I actually think it's a fun experience. And it's got great music throughout, but that particular track, Lament of Innocence, is awesome.
Oh yeah, no.
And I was actually talking to somebody in our Discord before any Belmonts were officially shown, and we're like, man, you know what needs to be on there? Lament of Innocence. So I'm super psyched about that track.
This really is way more than I think any one of us could have ever guessed or asked for.
Oh, it's more than we deserve.
Yeah, it really is just like you've got everything because you've obviously got like the first level themes, which as they often are kind of like the most iconic in their game, like Vampire Killer, Beginning, or Ruined Castle Corridor, or Jet Black Incursion. But then you've also got boss fight music like Black Knight. They took from everything. They took from late game music. They took from early game music. They took from like not just like level.
They took from 2 different arcade games.
Yeah, Haunted Castle.
Here's the thing about Haunted Castle, people. Not even Castlevania fans care about Haunted Castle.
Yeah, no one cares about Haunted Castle. The vast majority of Castlevania fans don't even know it exists because all they know it are from its remixes. Like for me, I knew Cross Your Heart from Portrait of Ruin. There's just a level of love and enthusiasm for Castlevania that is just so palpable, and it's really just so appreciated.
I do wish there was more from Super Castlevania.
Yeah.
It really does come more from the NES titles, but the multi-whipping and stuff, there are things that come from Super Castlevania, and I just really like that soundtrack in particular. And also some of the handheld ones could have used more entries, but we have 34, so I can't really complain. You know which one I like actually from Super Castlevania? Speaking of atmospheric ones like we were talking about earlier, the Waterfalls theme. That's so good. Yeah, that's the thing. Castlevania has such great music.
I mean, it really is known for its music in a way that very few series are. Like Sonic, in some ways, is known for its music, but like Castlevania, it's very hard to think of like a major video game franchise that's known more for its music than Castlevania.
I will say actually Final Fantasy, but unfortunately,
right,
Square Enix sucks. So whenever we start doing modding, no matter how Smash Ultimate is, I'm going to mod the game because I need to add tracks to Final Fantasy, to Midgar.
Yeah.
Because it's, what a shame.
I mean,
but going back to Castlevania, yeah, I'm happy with what we got. I wish we got more, but I mean, you have to stop somewhere, and every track makes sense.
Yeah.
Except for maybe some of those Haunted Castle ones.
I don't
actually
know.
had a good tracks.
I'm actually going to agree.
But we definitely got a lot. Let's move on real quick. Let's just look at the memories that came out from the blog. There was the memory with Richter on August 17th. Richter first appeared on Nintendo consoles in 1995 in Castlevania and Dracula X for the Super Nintendo. This game takes place a few hundred years after Simon's story. So for people that don't know, the Belmonts have to fight Dracula every 100 years. It's a vampire killer whip is passed down through generations, and they all have holy power and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I'm going to say this. I've never actually played Dracula X.
I thought Dracula X was the kind of weird SNES version of Rondo.
Yeah, it's kind of a bad port of Rondo. When it came out, I was a big Castlevania fan, and I had played Bloodlines on the Genesis, and I loved Super Castlevania 4. But I looked at this game, and it was towards the end of the Super Nintendo lifespan. It wasn't, like, readily available in every store, I feel like. It wasn't, like, advertised a lot. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh, it looks like... And I think I heard from somebody, it's like, oh, they just look like a TurboGrafx game and gave it a port on the Nintendo. And it was so weird to me to go on the Super Nintendo from having full whip control and having the button to throw an item to going back to the NES style of having to hit up, that it just... When I looked at it, the game just didn't really appeal to me. And It's kind of a shame. I wish I had, but that's okay. I played Rondo later, and I feel like if I was to go back and actually play Dracula X now, I'd be like, this is just like a really bad version of Rondo. It even took, I think...
It's odd that they used that, but I guess maybe he figured that since it was the port and it was on the Nintendo, he should just show the Nintendo one first.
Right, exactly. And it's not like there was a huge difference in years.
93.
I guess it was 93. And it's still Richter's story, so that makes sense. Simon's memory. This one was from August 9th. He made his debut in the 1986 game, Castlevania. He carries on the bloodline of the Belmont family of vampire hunters who've been battling against Dracula for generations. Entering the castle alone, he takes on the revived Dracula. And after he kills Dracula, Dracula places a curse on him, and then he has to collect all of Dracula's body parts to resurrect him and kill him for good in order to end Simon's curse in Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. That's not from the thing. That's just me talking.
Oh yeah, no.
He's the only Belmont canonically to have defeated Dracula twice. Oh. That's like Simon's real claim to fame within the like canon timeline, because he's kind of in the middle. Like Trevor was the first one to fight Dracula. Leon was the first Belmont to get the vampire hunter and start all of that. You know, Richter was the last one to wield the whip before it went into dormancy. Julius, I guess, is the one that actually killed Dracula or whatever in a game that never happened. But anyways, yeah, like Simon actually in the grand scheme of things, that's what makes him special. What makes him special actually, you know, in real life, in our world, is the fact that he was the protagonist of the first game, and that game's been remade like 8 times. So we've actually played him a lot. But there's actually only 2 times that he's fought Dracula.
He's also was the guy who showed up in DreamX TV World Fighters. He was also one of the few characters to be brought back for the Dumb Lords of Shadow games. He was their version of the Ryu character in Judgment.
Oh yeah, he does a lot of stuff like that. I mean, he was in Captain N. He was in Captain N, for God's sake.
So was Alucard, actually.
Which we have everybody now. All right, and then today's stage, and this was on August 15th, Dracula's Castle. On the stage, various characters from throughout the series will appear as guests, and you can get items by breaking the candles, which is an awesome touch, by the way. Yeah. I love, by the way, that he uses the Zelda heart item to restore health. But in Castlevania, obviously, you collect hearts, but it's not for health, it's for ammunition, which is really weird compared to every other game series out there.
Of course, they also have, cleverly put meats, throughout those trailers, too, so you get the actual health, Castlevania health as well.
Oh, I love when he throws the holy water on Link's shield and it explodes, and then you see the chicken. Because I feel like that works 2 ways, because it's Breath of the Wild Link, so he's cooking, but Simon breaks blocks with holy water, and then there's food in it. Yeah. So it's like a double reference. That was awesome. Also, I feel like Simon and Richter are probably going to be almost identical echo-wise.
Yeah.
But I think it's weird because their sub-weapons do work a little differently. Like, I thought it would have been nice, for instance, if Simon's holy water had more of a vertical flame effect. Like, it went higher and did a multi-hit, and then Richter's had more horizontal distance, like it does in his games, where it covers more... It goes across the ground a little while, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, no, I'd have liked to see that. I think their differences are going to be fairly minute compared to, say, Crom. But,
right, exactly.
But that's okay.
But, I'm still glad I got to play both of them.
It really is just unbelievable. And as much as
a lot of fan service.
There's just so much in here. It's really just unbelievable. I mean, I checked. If you combined all the music we know about in Yoshi's Island and all the music we know about from Sonic the Hedgehog, this has as much as both of those combined.
Ah, it's so good, and that's the atmosphere. Castlevania adds a lot, not just the playable characters. There's a lot that's being added with the series, and I'm glad we got it.
It's dark, but in this kind of cool gothic way that harkens back to really all the games in the series. It's got public domain characters. Like, Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and Medusa are on this one game, in this one stage. It's awesome. I
like that I feel like it's really the last great NES franchise.
Yeah.
Which is why it reminds me more of Nintendo than, a lot of the first-party Nintendo series. I feel like maybe something like Ninja Gaiden, you could also argue, but Castlevania was really it.
Yeah.
And it got treated with a lot of love. It's clearly a series. Yeah. Oh, Dragon's Quest, of course.
But
it's a series that Sakurai clearly has affection towards, and he did it so much justice. So I guess those are my final thoughts. And anything else you want to say, or I think you already pretty much said what you had to say.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess really all I can think about right now is just the lighting in Dracula's Castle.
The lighting?
It looks just... Yeah, no, seriously, it looks incredible. It looks dark with these reds and lights and this beautiful mood in the background. You know what? It feels like how every Castlevania game, no matter what the genre, no matter what the platform, this is how they felt in your head.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's a better 3D representation of Castlevania. I know it's on a 2D plane than I have ever seen.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the Castlevania I want. You see, and I've seen Castlevania fans say that actually on Castlevania websites and forums and Reddit threads and other things.
Yeah.
And it's just what they said with Mega Man. They're like, Nintendo with Smash Brothers is showing more love to this series than Konami has in years, and it's amazing.
Yeah, people said the same about Pac-Man and Sonic for that matter.
Yep, at the time, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up. We'll be back to talk about the Netflix Castlevania when that happens for sure.
And it will take what you think? It'll be a 3-hour podcast?
Probably. You can find us both at Source Gaming. You can find me at 8bit_Spazzy on Twitter. Where can they find you, Wolfman?
Twitter.wolfmanjew. And as always, you can find both of us at sourcegaming.info.
What a horrible night to end a recording. Later, guys.